Okay, let's go through these characteristics of the graph of a quadratic function. So we'll define different characteristics. So as we start, we'll be having the vertex, opening, and the maximum or minimum point of a parabola or the graph of a quadratic function. So to start, we define a vertex. So I have here an example. So one is a parabola that opens upward and another one is a parabola that opens downward. So we'll try to identify their vertex at the same time their opening and is it having a maximum or minimum point. So on this first one, this parabola that opens upward, so ito yon. Yan. So vertex is the turning point of the parabola. Therefore, this is the vertex. Ayan, ito siya dun sa dalawang parabola natin. So once again, it is defined by HK. At the same time, yan, nandun siya dun sa graph natin. So our vertex will always be on the coordinate HK, where H is the value of X and K is the value of Y of our vertex. So our parabola opens upward kapag letter U yung itsura niya. And our parabola opens downward kapag naman pababa or inverted letter U yung itsura niya. Parang ito. Yan. So, inverted letter U yan. So, you will only have a minimum point if your parabola is opening upward. So, laging tandaan yan. Magkakaroon ka lang ng minimum point kapag yung parabola mo is opening upward. While you'll be having a maximum point if your parabola is opening downward. Yan. So, dyan siya makikita. Okay. So, as we proceed with this other characteristic of a quadratic function or graph of a quadratic function, so we have the axis of symmetry. So, coming from the word symmetry, so it divides one whole into two equal parts. So, as you can see here, ito yung axis of symmetry natin dito sa parabola natin that opens upward. So, it is always defined by x is equal to h. So, it divides the graph into two parts such that one half of the graph is a reflection of the other half. So, parang ang dating kasi, hinahati niya tong parabola natin sa two equal parts. So, yan yung purpose ng ating axis of symmetry. So, madali lang naman makita yan because it is passing through the vertex. So, kung naaalala nyo, ito yung ating vertex. Yan. So, it is also defined by the linear equation x equal to h, wherein h is the x value of your vertex. So, even if your parabola is opening downward, we will still be having x is equal to h kasi vertex pa rin naman natin yung hk dyan kahit yung parabola natin is opening downward. So, that is the axis of symmetry. Yan. So as we proceed, we also have another characteristics of a graph of a quadratic function, which is defined as the domain and the range. So as you can see, I also have two examples here. Yan. Meron tayo dito a parabola that opens upward and a parabola that opens downward. So we define the domain of the quadratic function as set of all real numbers. But the same as your lesson during your grade 8, dinidefine kasi natin si domain as the set of x values of a given graph. So kung titignan nyo, for example, itong parabola na to, so madalas nakikita natin meron niyang arrow for both ends, di ba? So ibig sabihin, tama ito, yung nakalagay your parabola will extend to the right of your x-axis. At the same time, hahaba pa kasi yan eh. Hahaba yung letter U na yan. Pataas yan. So, ibig sabihin, nag-extend siya to the right. At the same time, mag-extend din siya to the left of your x-axis. So, papunta siya ng left. In other words, it will extend for both sides of your x-axis. That means, lahat ng x value dun sa graph natin madadaanan when it comes to a parabola, even if your parabola is opening downward. 'Di ba? So, yung parabola mo kahit nag-open yan pababa, mag-extend din yan both pababa from the right side of your x-axis and the left side of your x-axis. So that means the values of x in your parabola will contain all of the real numbers in the x-axis. So your domain will always be all x values. In other words, all real numbers. Yan. Yung range naman natin, it is defined. Ayan. So, ito yung notation yan. Set notation yung tawag natin dyan. So, ang ibig sabihin yan, x such that, ang ibig sabihin ng sangguhit na ganyan, such that x is an element of real number. So, yeah, ang ibig sabihin niyan, the domain is all real numbers. Yun lang ibig sabihin niyan. Pero mas maganda kasing tignan kapag nakaset notation siya. So, palaging ganyan. Even if your parabola will open upward or downward at kahit man ano man maging itsura ng ating parabola. So, ganun din. X such that x is an element. So, yung epsilon na yan is representing for element of real numbers. So, yung iba, kapag sinusulat yung R na yan, parang gagawa ka lang ng 11, 10, gagawa ka ng R. So, yan yung real number symbol. So, we defined naman range as depends on the parabola if it is opening upward or downward. So, if we are considering parabola and we also considering the range of this parabola, depende kasi ang range natin, di ba, dinidefine natin yan as the y values or the set of y values of a given graph. So, ang y value natin, ang i-deal na natin dyan yung vertical. So, is it going up or going down? So, dito, hindi natin pwedeng sabihin na all real numbers. For example, etong graph na to. Yung parabola mo, hindi naman siya dadaan ng 0 na value ni y. Hindi rin siya dadaan ng 1. Ang values na tatamaan niya is from positive 3, from the vertex 0, 3. Tataas yan, papunta ng 4, 5. So, kahit dito, 4, 5. So, yun yung mga y values na dadaanan niya. Kung dito ay magiging 1, 4, magiging 2, 5. Yan yung mga y values niya. 4 and 5. Pataas lang ng pataas. So, your range will depend if your parabola is opening upward or downward. So, how will you define the range? So, as you can see here, range is defined as y is greater than or equal to 3. Kasi nga, from the vertex is 0, 3, then pataas siya. So, greater than or equal kasi kasama dun si 3. So, pataas siya. Kaya yung range natin is from positive 3, pataas. Kaya siya greater than or equal to 3. Kapag naman yung parabola mo is opening downward, simula dun sa vertex. So, in this case, we have positive 2 as the value of our y. So, from there, pababa naman siya. So, y is less than or the set of y values in this given parabola is going down. Ano, yung direction niya pababa. So, that means your range is y is less than 2. Pababa siya. From the vertex, y value is 2, pababa. So, how do we now define the range of the given parabola? So, if your parabola is opening upward, that means it is always greater than the y value of your vertex, wherein your y value of your vertex is defined as k. And if your parabola naman is opening downward, it is going down. So, it is now less than. So, less than the value of y from your vertex, which is defined as k. So, ganyan natin dinedefine yung ating range and domain. So, sa domain, walang kahirap-hirap. Palaging ang sagot natin dyan is all real numbers. Kasi mag-extend yan for both right and left side of our given Cartesian plane. Pero pagdating naman sa range, depende kasi kung pataas siya or pababa at siya mag-uumpisa. Depende rin yun sa ating vertex. Now, so as we continue, we have this last characteristic of a quadratic function. We have the intercepts. So, as we may recall, the x-intercept during our grade 8 is defined as the point where the parabola intersect the x-axis. At the same time, it is the coordinates wherein your y is equal to 0, or the values of x-intercept are the values of x when y is equal to 0. So yan, ito yung point na yon, yung dalawa. So in this case, we have 2 points, that is negative 1, 0, and 3, 0. Uh, the coordinates is not exactly the x-intercept. The x-intercept from this graph will just be the x values. So, ang x-intercept natin dyan will be itong 1, ay negative 1, at itong positive 3. So, the x-intercept for this given is negative 1 and positive 3. So, kasi nag-intersect siya. Ito yung x-axis natin, no? Ito yung x-axis natin. Tumama itong point na to, tsaka itong point na to, doon sa ating x-axis. So, yan yung x-intercept natin. So, on the other hand, meron naman tayong y-intercept. So, as we may recall, y-intercept is the y-coordinate of the point where the parabola intersects the y-axis naman. So, ito naman yung y-axis natin. Saan ba tatama dun yung parabola natin? So, ito yung y-axis. So, in this case, tumama siya dito. And that point is 0, 3. So, you can also identify that y-intercept. It is the point that passes through the y-axis and the parabola wherein x is equal to 0 naman. So, dito in this case, we have 0, 3. So, ang y-intercept natin is not exactly the coordinate 0, 3, but rather just the value of y when x is equal to 0. That is just 3. So, that's how we define the intercept of a quadratic function. X and y intercepts. Yan. So, just an additional, you may vary the different numbers of x-intercept depending on a given graph. So, the x-intercept is also called the zeros or roots of a given function. So, kung naalala nyo, nung nag-lesson tayo about quadratic equation, meron tayong pinag-aralan about the roots or the solution of a quadratic equation. So, ganun din siya, wherein we set the value of y equal to 0. So, nagiging equation siya pag ganun. So, the number of x-intercept indicates the number of solutions depending on the given function. So, tignan nyo itong mga graph na to. So, kung mapapansin nyo, dito sa una, the parabola intersects your x-axis. Ito yung x-axis natin. Tumama siya ng 2 beses. That means you will be having 2 solutions. Ilan yung x-intercepts mo dyan? 2. Katulad ng example natin kanina. In this case naman, sumakto dun sa vertex natin yung ating x-intercept. Pwede mangyari yan. Wherein, you will only have 1 solution. That means isa lang yung value ni x na magpapasiro sa ating equation or function. Then, in this case, you can only see the value of x-intercept is only 1. Isa lang yan kasi isang beses lang naman siya nag-intersect sa x-axis. And there will also be a case na hindi tatama yung ating parabola or yung graph natin sa x-axis. That means your x-intercept, you will not be having any x-intercept. Ito yung mga case na pag nagsosolve tayo nung quadratic equation na ang sagot natin is no real solution. So, yan yun. Pero, pagdating naman sa y-intercept, it will always have a y-intercept at isa lang yon. Okay, to better understand how do we use these characteristics or 8 characteristics of a quadratic function, it is better for us if we try to apply it using different examples. So I have here 3 examples wherein we will try to identify these 8 different characteristics of a parabola. So we have here the given equation or the function y is equal to x squared minus 6x plus 5, which will give us this graph. So ito na yung graph niya para hindi na natin i-graph. So ang mahalaga lang naman dito is ma-identify natin kung ano yung itong mga values ng ating characteristics. So, on the instruction, it says identify the vertex. So, vertex, direction of the opening of the parabola or opening of the graph, the domain, the range, the x and y intercepts given the equation. State whether the vertex is a minimum or maximum point. Yan, so minimum ba siya or maximum? And also, you have to identify the axis of symmetry. So, sabay-sabay natin or sama-sama na natin silang i-identify. So, good thing in this example, we already have the graph. So, hindi ko na kayo pag-graph pa ulit. So, first, we try to identify the vertex. So, HK. So, ito yung na-recall natin kanina. In this case, you can see that your parabola is opening upward. Therefore, we just need to look for the lowest or the minimum point of this given example. So, in this case, ito yun. So, define lang natin yung x value niya is positive 3. Yan, naka-align siya doon. Then, yung y value niya is negative 4. So, ang vertex natin, ito yon yung vertex natin. It is now HK, wherein it is equivalent to 3, negative 4. So, yan na yung ating vertex. Now, so lagay natin siya dito sa ating table. So, H is positive 3 and K is negative 4. Now, it is easy to answer opening of the graph. Madali lang yan. Our parabola is opening upward. Ganun lang kasimple. Upward or downward lang naman yan. Now, if we already know the opening of the parabola, it is also easy for us to identify where is the vertex located. Yun nga yung ginamit nating idea, di ba? So, since our parabola is opening upward, hanapin lang natin, your vertex will always be at the minimum point, yung pinakababa. Yun, kapag opening upward. Pag downward, maximum point yon. So, minimum yung sagot natin dito. Then, how do we solve for, or how do we identify the axis of symmetry? That will be x is equal to h. Yan lang yung palagi. Wherein h is just the value of your x on the vertex. So, in this graph, locate ko lang siya. Yan yun. Yung umahati sa parabola natin into two equal parts. That is the axis of symmetry. Now, since our h value is positive 3, therefore, our axis of symmetry is just x is equal to positive 3. Ganun lang. So, lagay natin siya dito sa ating table. Now, it is easy for us to identify the domain. Sabi ko kanina, your parabola will extend to the left and to the right of our given Cartesian plane. So, lahat ng x value makukuha niya. So, ang sagot natin palagi sa domain, when it comes to a parabola, it will always be all real numbers. So, we'll just need to indicate it into a set notation wherein it says x such that x is an element of real number. So, yan yung sagot natin. Palaging ganyan, kahit yung parabola natin is opening downward. Next, the range. Now, so as you can see, your parabola is opening upward. That means from the vertex or the y value of your vertex, which is negative 4, pataas siya. So, is it greater than or less than? So, ang sagot dyan is greater than. Kasi pataas siya. So, y values will be from negative 4 going up. So, the answer is y is greater than or equal to negative 4. So, just need to write it into set notation. So, greater than, ganun yun, greater than or equal. So, y such that y is greater than or equal to negative 4. Where in negative 4, madali lang naman i-identify yan. Si negative 4 is yan yung ating k value of the vertex. Next, we just need to identify the x-intercept. So, kung tignan nyo yung parabola, saan siya tumama dito sa ating x-axis? So, dito, sa may 1, tsaka dito sa may 5. So, ganun lang kadali. Those points will be having the coordinates 1, 0, and 5, 0. As you can see, the coordinates will be having y values that is equal to 0. And you just need to get the x value. Therefore, our x-intercept will just be 1 and positive 5. So, madali nga yun eh. Tignan mo na lang kung nasan yung x value nila. So, that is the x-intercept. So, dalawa yung natin dito, x-intercept. Next, the y-intercept naman, saan siya tumama? So, tignan natin dito sa graph. Ito yung y. Ito yung y-axis natin. Yan. Tumama yung parabola natin dito sa may 5. Therefore, that will be our y-intercept. So, that will be having the coordinates 0, 5, but we just need to get the y value, which is 5. So, that will be our y-intercept. So, ganun lang kadali. Or ganun lang Kasi simple, hanapin yung mga characteristics ng ating parabola. Okay, let's discuss another example. So, example number 2, no? Iba naman yung kulay. Next, so we have the given y is equal to negative 2x squared minus 8x plus minus 8. So as you can see, here's already the graph. So all we need to do is to identify the characteristic. So parehas lang din naman. So same step. All we need to do is to identify first the vertex, wherein we define it as hk. In this case, our parabola is opening downward. Therefore, ang technique lang dyan is hanapin mo yung pinakamataas na point kasi downward opening niya. So ito yun, pinakamataas na point ng parabola. So, di-define lang natin yan. Ang x value niya, pumunta siya ng left side. So, negative 2. So, ito yun. Di lang nakita. So, negative 2. Then, hindi siya tumaas. Hindi rin siya bumaba. So, nag-remain lang siya sa y value na 0. So, negative 2 tsaka 0, that will be your vertex. So, negative 2, 0 yung vertex natin. Lagay lang natin siya dito sa table. Negative 2, 0. Then, next, madali lang din to sagutan. Opening of the graph. Obvious naman, your parabola opens downward. Inverted letter U yung itsura niya. Next, is it on the maximum or on the minimum point? So, as we can see, katulad ng binanggit ko kanina, the graph is opening downward. Therefore, our vertex is at our maximum point. So, yan yung sagot natin. Next, axis of symmetry. The formula is just copy x is equal, then get the value of h. In this case, the vertex will be having an x value that is negative 2. So, yun yung h natin. So, ito yung axis of symmetry natin. Therefore, we define this line as x is equal to negative 2. So, ganyan palagi tsura. Basta vertical line, ang equation niyan will always be x is equal to. So, ang ide-depend na lang natin is yung value ni h. So, since our h is negative 2, therefore, our axis of symmetry will be having the equation x is equal to negative 2. Next, domain. Walang kahirap-hirap. Kopyahin mo lang yung set notation kanina. It will be the set of all real numbers defined as the set notation x such that x is an element of real number. So, kopyahin lang natin yan. Tapos na. Palaging ganun yung domain, nag-extend kasi siya for both right and left of the x values natin. So, pasok yung positive tsaka negative values ng x natin. And for the range naman, it opens downward. That means it is now less than. Kasi pababa na siya eh. Ang tanong na lang, saan siya mag-uumpisa? From what point or what y value siya pababa? So, dito siya nag-umpisa sa 0. Ito yan. 0. Pababa ng negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Yun yung mga y values niya eh. So, our y-intercept will be going down from 0, which is also the value of k. So, that means our y-intercept will be y is less than. Or our range pala, not y-intercept. Y is less than 0. Yan. So, lagay mo lang sa set notation, y such that y is less than 0. Or less than or equal to 0. So, yan yung ating range. So, basta kapag opening upward, greater than or equal. Kapag opening downward, less than or equal. Yan. So, mamimili na lang kayo. And your value here will always depend on the value of k. Kasi doon naman yung highest or lowest point ng ating parabola or ng graph ng ating quadratic function. X-intercept, so as you can see here, it will only intersect at the vertex part. Ito yung in-explain ko kanina. Kung saan yung vertex, doon na rin yung x-intercept kasi doon siya tumama sa x-axis natin. So, doon lang ulit tayo maglo-locate sa ating x-coordinate ng vertex, which is negative 2. So, our x-intercept will only be negative 2. Isa lang siya kasi isang beses lang naman siya tumama sa x-axis. Our y-intercept, as you can see here, ito siya, bandang negative 8 tumama yung parabola natin dito sa ating y-axis. Therefore, our y-intercept will be there and it will have the coordinate 0 and negative 8. But in this case, we just need the value of negative 8 because that is only the y-intercept. So that will be negative 8 for the y-intercept. Okay, for the last example, we have example number 3. We have the given y is equal to 3x squared plus 6x plus 5. Yan. So, ganun lang ulit. It opens upward. So, nasaan yung vertex natin? Nasa minimum point, pinakamababang point ng ating parabola. So, ito yon. So, our x value is -1 and our y value, yan, pag pinag-connect mo yan, no? Yan, x is -1 and y value is +2. Therefore, our vertex will be -1, +2. So, our HK or vertex is -1, +2. Opening of the graph, it will always open upward, as you can see. Yan, upward din siya. Now, since it is opening upward, is it on the maximum or on the minimum? The vertex is at the minimum point. Yan, kasi nasa pinakamababa ang point siya. Next, axis of symmetry. Draw a line that divides the parabola into two equal parts. Now, then follow the idea of x is equal to h, wherein h is the x value of your vertex, -1. So, we define that axis of symmetry as x is equal to -1. So, lagay lang natin dyan sa table. Domain. Paulit-ulit lang tayo. All real numbers defined as x such that x is an element of real numbers. So, kokopyahin lang yan. Next, range naman. So, kung makikita nyo, from +2 dito sa point na to, tumaas siya ng 3, 4, 5, 6. So, pataas siya. So, is it less than or greater than? In this case, we will use greater than. Wherein, y is greater than or equal to. From the y value of your vertex, that will be +2. Yan. So, lagay lang natin sa set notation, y such that y is greater than or equal to +2. Gets po? Now, if you take a look at the given graph, may nakikita ba kayo na tumama yung ating parabola dito sa x-axis? Wala, di ba? So, ito yung example natin na magkakaroon tayo ng not real solution or will not be having an x-intercept. So, none yung sagot natin sa x-intercept. And for the y-intercept, meron yung value. Kasi tumama pa rin naman yung parabola natin dito sa may 5. Oh. Ito yung y-axis natin. Tumama siya dun sa 5. Therefore, this will be your y-intercept. Burahin ko lang to. Y-intercept. And that will be having the coordinate 0, 5. We will just need the y value when x is equal to 0. Yun yung y-intercept natin. So, y-intercept will be 5.